By Commissioner Randolph, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Casaban.
Gracious Father, once again, we come to you to say thank you for all the blessings you bestowed on our lives, Lord. There's so much going on around us and sickness around. But, Lord, we thank you for allowing your grace and mercy to be ever present in all of our lives. We thank you for this commission. And Lord, a special blessing upon Dave Doherty and his family for the loss of his wife, and anybody else that's going through bereavement at this time. Allow us, Heavenly Father, to make the decision that's in the best interest of all. And all these blessings we ask in your holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God save America. Thank you. In our packets are the minutes of our December 12th, 2017 meeting. If you please review them, and we'll address any comments or entertain any motions. Commissioner Lauren.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Commissioner Lauren to approve. Commissioner Davis.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Any further comments? Please vote.
Ten yea, motion carries.
Thank you. Election of officers. Every year, in accordance with our bylaws, the commission will elect a chairman and a vice chairman, and the chairman will appoint a parliamentarian. So at this time, I would ask for any motion for election of officers. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assuming you're still interested, I'd like to nominate you to continue serving as chair of this commission and for Commissioner Doherty as vice chair. Is that correct? Oh, is it?
Commissioner Davis.
Oh, that's correct. I apologize. Commissioner Davis is vice chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Richard to nominate Commissioner Manella as chair and Commissioner Davis as vice chair. Commissioner Randolph.
If there's no other nominations, I move that the nominations be closed. And second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Randolph, not hearing any other nominees, to close nominations, and second the motion of Commissioner Richard. Any further comments? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Richard, second by Commissioner Randolph, nominating Commissioner Manella as chair and Commissioner Davis as vice chair. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. And as chair, I'd respectfully ask Commissioner Richard to be appointed as parliamentarian once again. Thank you. This is a public hearing. The public is encouraged to speak on behalf of or in opposition to any case. Entering parish right-of-way, servitudes and easements. Entering parish right-of-way, 6th and DeSoto Streets, Ward 4, District 5. Request to enter parish right-of-way for the purpose of laying and connecting a sewer force main. The debtor, Bunkie Properties, LLC. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Reichert Toledano. Staff.
Yes, this enter the right-of-way is permission to enter the parish right-of-way, specifically a portion of 6th Street and DeSoto Street located within the Chinchuba subdivision for the purpose of laying and connecting sewer force main.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? If you please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name's Joe Helm, address 981 Walker Street, New Orleans, Louisiana 70124.
And the reason for the request, sir?
We are trying to move the, we originally were going to put a sewer plant behind the building, and we went to the parish, and I was told by the contractor that we had a potential of moving into or pushing into the sewer. Mandeville, and that's what we were trying to do, and that's what we're requesting tonight.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? This time I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Davis to approve. Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Entering Parish right-of-way, 6th Avenue, Ward 3, District 5. Request to enter Parish right-of-way for the purpose of laying and connecting a sewer force main. The debtor, MVH Properties LLC. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Reichert Taladano. Staff?
Yes, this permission to enter the parish right-of-way, specifically the portion of 6th Avenue between Soul Drive and Hellenberg Road located within Berg Boulevard subdivision for the purpose of laying and connecting sewer and water lines.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Daryl Fussell with Aero Engineering, and we're going to install a sewer force main on one side of the road and a water line on the other side of the road to connect 5 lots.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph. Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner Casabon. Second by Commissioner Casabon. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve, second by Commissioner Casabon. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Minor subdivisions, 2017-877-MSP. Parcel A into parcels A-1, A-2, Ward 2, District 6. The owner, Vicky A. Sharp. The surveyor, John G. Cummings and Associates, Inc. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason why a public hearing is required for this is that parcel A is part of an existing minor subdivision. The owner is proposing to create 2 parcels from a 15.34 acre parcel that's part of an existing 4-parcel minor subdivision. And since the request complies with all code requirements, the staff has no objections to the proposed minor subdivision request.
Is the petitioner here? If you'd please come to the podium, state your name and address, and the reason for your request.
Vicky Sharp. My resident address is 79107 Davidson Road, Folsom, Louisiana. The reason for my request is I'd like to give my son 5 acres of land.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, this is totally, we had to do this because of, they had to build a road in order to get to this parcel. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Commissioner Randolph. Second by Commissioner Randolph. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve, second by Commissioner Randolph. Please vote.
Motion carries.
2017-881-MSP, parcel B1 into parcels B1A and B1B, Ward 2, District 6. The owner, Mary and Dorothy Collins. Surveyor, LS Land Surveying, LLC. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the reason why this is public hearing is required for this one is that parcel B1 is part of an existing minor subdivision. The owner is proposing to create 2 parcels from a 9.84 acre parcel that is part of an existing minor subdivision. And since the request complies with all code requirements, the staff has no objections to the proposed minor subdivision request.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Mary Collins, 69430 Fair Oaks Lane in Covington.
And the reason for the request, ma'am?
My mother and I bought the land together, and we would like to separate it into 2 parcels so we can each build a house on our own part. This is my mother right here.
Dorothy Collins.
Thank you. And you concur, ma'am?
Yes.
Wonderful. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Davis to approve. Commissioner Willie. Second by Commissioner Willie. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve. Second by Commissioner Willie. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Petitions requests, we have none. Entering the Tammany Trace, we have none. Revocations, closing review, we have none. Re-subdivision review, 2017-893-MRP. The Plantation, parcels 4A and 5A into parcels 4A1, 4A2, 4A3, and 4A4, Ward 10, District 6. The petitioner, Robert Rath. Surveyor, John E. Bono and Associates, Inc. Owner, Robert Rath. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
The owner is proposing to re-subdivide 2 parcels into 4 in order to create more marketable parcels. A public hearing is required for this proposal since a waiver of the parcel road frontage minimum requirement of 300 feet is required. Due to the fact that all of the parcels are large acreage tracts within a rural subdivision development, the staff has no objections to the proposed re-subdivision request. Therefore, if the commission decides to approve this request, a waiver of the regulations are required relative to the parcel with issue, and a 2/3 majority vote of the full membership of the commission, 8 members, is needed in order to approve pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 125, Section 125.24, waiver of regulations of the Land Development Code.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner. As Mr. Keller said, all of these parcels are large. We're dealing with 2 very large parcels at the outset, and there's only 4 that are being created. So we have 2 additional parcels, all of which will have frontage on Shenandoah Lane, and we would respectfully request your approval of the division as you see on the plat from Mr. Bono. I would point out that that the prior subdivision of the 2 original parcels had a similar layout in that it was a flag lot, if you will, in that there was a long access way that gave access from the interior of the parcel to Shenandoah Lane, and so that's being maintained here. There is an existing drive or driveway that goes into these parcels now. It is likely that will ultimately may be a shared driveway, but we felt like it was best, and in keeping with your code, we wanted to make sure that each of the parcels did have frontage, which this re-subdivision will allow for. 2 of the parcels have 60-foot frontage, and then parcel 4A3 you'll see has over 40 feet. So there's ample frontage for ingress and egress, but it doesn't meet the 300-foot requirement. But from a practical standpoint, we believe that this will work well. It's consistent with what's in the development already, and we would respectfully request your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph. Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner Casabon.
With waiver. With waiver.
With waiver. Second by Commissioner Casabon with waiver. Any further comments? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Can you?
if it's, so you said right now there's a shared drive?
Right now, they're on the ground, there is a drive that goes in, yes.
But it's possible there could be 4 separate drives in the future?
It's possible that there could be, yes.
Right. That strikes me as kind of odd, but.
That's why I mentioned that from a practical standpoint, it is most likely that existing drive will be shared. However, if in the future there was some issue, at least each party would have their own frontage.
Okay, that was it.
Any other comments? Now, we have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve with waiver, second by Commissioner Casabon. Please vote.
Mr. Richardson? Motion carries.
2017-894-MRP, The Plantation, parcels 7A1, 10C and unplatted land into parcels 7A1A, 7A1B, 10C1, and HOA1, Ward 10, District 6. Petitioner, Robert Rath. Surveyor, John E. Bono and Associates, Inc. Owner, Robert Rath. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is in the same subdivision as the prior one. The owner is proposing to re-subdivide 2 parcels into some unplatted land into 3 residential parcels and 1 parcel for an access servitude. A public hearing is required for this proposal since a waiver of the parcel frontage requirements of 300 feet is required for all parcels concerned and for the creation of the access servitude parcel. Because all the parcels are large acreage tracts within the rural subdivision development and the access servitude parcel will facilitate the HOA for access purposes, the staff has no objections to the proposed re-subdivision request. Therefore, if the commission decides to approve this request, a waiver of the regulations are required relative to the parcel width issue and the granting of the next access servitude, and a 2/3 majority waiver vote of the full commission of 8 members is needed in order to approve pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 125, Section 125.244, waiver of regulations of the Land Development Code.
Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Paul Morone on behalf of the petitioner. Couple of purposes for this request. One is that there was some significant acreage that was owned by the developer that was outside of the subdivision, and it was his desire to bring it into the subdivision, and that acreage is now forming part of what you see as 7A1B and also 10C1. We end up with 3 parcels, one extremely large, almost 194 acres, the other almost 20 acres, and then about 12 acres. So we would respectfully request your approval. The waiver only applies as to Lot 10C1, which does have frontage on Shiloh Lane, but that frontage is not at the 300 feet requirement. However, 10C1 will also have the ability to access via the new servitude parcel that is being created pursuant to this resub plat. So given the nature of the property, the size of the parcels, we'd respectfully request your approval of the plat as submitted. Be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have.
Thank you, Mr. Morone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, Paul, I know this originally was our 9 lots on this, so all of these will be included in the plantation.
Yes.
We're just making them, I mean, they're still huge lots and stuff, but we're looking at that within that total 9, now it'll be more than that.
That's correct. We're
so.
taking the acreage that was outside of it, and we're bringing it in and adding to those two parcels, most of which is going into 7A1B to create the 194-acre tract.
And all the subdivision regulations will be attached to those also?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a
correct.
motion to approve.
With waiver?
With the waiver.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve with the waiver. Commissioner Richardson? second by Commissioner Richardson. Any further comment? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve with waiver, second by Commissioner Richardson. Please vote.
Motion carries with waiver.
Dormant subdivision review, we have none. Tentative subdivision review, 2017-839-TP, Lono Park, Phase 2, Ward 8, District 14, developer owner, Mark Grimaldi, engineer J.V. Burks and Associates, Inc. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable T.J. Smith. This was postponed from the December 12, 2017 meeting. Staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the developer is requesting another postponement. They had a homeowners meeting out in that area last week, I believe it was, and they want to make some modifications to the plan. They're going to meet with staff sometime next week to go over those modifications, so they wish to have another postponement.
Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. As Mr. Keller stated, our firm is now involved with the handling of this matter, and there was a community meeting actually 2 weeks ago this evening. Because of some freeze days last week, we were unable to do some things that we hope to do. We are meeting with staff next week to discuss some modifications to the plan. We have promised and owe the community another community meeting before we come back to you. I mention these things because I'm not sure if we'll be ready to come back to you on February 20, which I believe is your next Planning Commission meeting, but we will attend that meeting in the event that we have not completed the items that I've discussed to seek further postponement into March. So the development team is actively working to revise the plan to try to accommodate as many of the concerns that have been expressed by residents, commissioners, and council persons as well. So we would appreciate a postponement this evening.
Postponed for 1 month? Mr.
1 month.
Shane?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the postponement? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
I'll make a motion to postpone till the February planning meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Lauren to postpone till the February meeting. Commissioner Davis.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Lauren to postpone till our February meeting, second by Commissioner Davis. Please vote.
Motion carries.
2017-888-TP, Lakeshore Village, Phase 3, Ward 9, District 13. Developer owner, D.R. Horton Incorporated. Engineer, Duplantis Design Group, P.C. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Michelle Blanchard. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposed 287-lot, single-family subdivision development phase. Comment number 1. According to our Public Records Department, Public Works Department, Lakeshore Village's east, a major collector street that will be used to access the development, is a private and gated street. Therefore, the internal streets within the development itself cannot be public. The developer, however, is disputing this issue, contending that the streets are indeed public. Comment 2, the staff is concerned that there will be some driveway cuts approximately every 50 feet for the lots on the on the west side of Lakeshore Village's east, which acts as the major collector road for the development, as well as for future development to the north, and should therefore be limited insofar as the number of direct driveway accesses. Therefore, in order to mitigate this issue, the staff recommends that the lots on the west side of the street be doubled in width from 50 feet to 100 feet, and that contiguous driveway access points be established for every 2 lots. Comment 3, due to the lack of any requirements that were established for this older planned unit development relative to setting aside green space and or recreational property for individual subdivision developments, we typically default to our minimum requirements for single-family residential lots based on 580 square feet of green space per lot. Therefore, this would equate in acreage based on 287 lots, provide a total of 3.82 acres. The developer is proposing to provide only 1.62 acres, which is scattered throughout the development in small pockets and slivers that essentially renders the property useless for any meaningful recreational use by the residents. Therefore, the staff recommends that the total 3.82 acres be provided and made into a centralized parcel within the development that can be utilized for recreational purposes such as playgrounds, ball fields, basketball courts, etc. Excuse me, if that cannot be accomplished, then the staff would recommend that as an alternative that that an aggregate walking, jogging trail be provided within the development. The staff understands that the developer is counting on allowing this phase to utilize some or all of the future Phase 4 amenities that currently would be included in an amenity package of active recreational uses. However, there is no guarantee as to when Phase 4 will actually be developed, if at all, and by what agreement or conditions will be established by the developer to ensure that Phase 3 will be able to participate and enjoy the use of the amenities in Phase 4. Hence the reason for the staff's recommendation of providing meaningful green space / active recreation for Phase 3. Comment 4, a specific notation should be depicted on the tentative plat indicating location of the sewer and water facilities will be located off-site. Comment 5, the developer will be providing temporary turnarounds at the end of the terminus of Lakeshore Village North, Providence Bay Road, and New Basin Road. Therefore, the developer must provide a performance obligation in the amount of $10,000 for each roadway for a period of 2 years to be provided in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision approval process in order to cover the construction costs associated with the cul-de-sac in the event, or cul-de-sacs in the event that the developer does not fulfill his obligations. Comment 6, Section 125-56D2 of Chapter 125 of the subdivision regulations only permits a maximum cul-de-sac length of 700 feet, and since the proposed street, New Basin Road, exceeds that requirement, a waiver of the regulations are required by the Commission. Comment 7, most of the lots do not have the typical minimum lot frontage of 60 feet on a cul-de-sac, therefore a waiver of the regulations are required by the Commission. Comment number 8, the developer should present to the Department of Development a recreational development plan at the time the developer files for preliminary subdivision review. That's assuming, of course, that the Commission requires him to put some type of recreation into this property prior to the developer seeking a work order to be issued. That should be done in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision approval. Said plan should be presented in a document form, inclusive of the amenities that are being provided, a site plan and/or landscape plan, if applicable, a time schedule for development, and the entity or entities whom shall be responsible for the liability and maintenance of the recreational and/or green space areas. If the Commission decides to approve this request, a waiver of the regulations are required relative to the following items: cul-de-sac length for Basin Road, 60-foot minimum lot width on cul-de-sacs, typical minimum green space requirements, and driveway cuts on corner lots from 60 feet required to the smallest, I believe, of 29 feet requested. See engineering comments below for additional detail. See letter attached dated January 9th, 2018 from Duplantis Design Group, PC, regarding the waiver request and their arguments for each. With that, the Department of Engineering has some comments.
General comments, number 1, include in the notes section that the HOA will maintain and own the required green spaces. Number 2, the developer has requested a 60-foot driveway setback. Staff does not feel the waiver as on all of these lots would be applicable, as side-loaded can be used to satisfy this requirement. 3, the master traffic impact analysis for Lakeshore Estates that includes this phase of Lakeshore Villages has been submitted and is currently under review. The TIA will need to be approved before preliminary can be granted. On the subdivision plat, remove the approval signature block from both plat pages, as the tentative plat will not be recorded. This information will not need to be included on the plat until the time of final approval. 5, revise the restrictive covenant number 4 to include or 1 foot above the center line of the road, whichever is greater. Staff recommends approval of the tentative subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all staff comments.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Chairman Manella. Again, for the record, Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I will be representing the owner and developer of the project this evening, D.R. Horton. And I thought that before I begin a presentation and discussion, that I would suggest to the commission some possibilities, and you ladies and gentlemen can direct me accordingly. I thought initially we might see if there are any in the audience from the general public that have an interest in this case. Seeing none, that perhaps makes it a little easier for me to ask for some additional time in the presentation. To give you an idea where I'm going, you may remember at our January Planning Commission meeting, you approved a minor subdivision of this tract, creating some legal lots of record. And at that time, I told you I would be with you next month to discuss tentative subdivision application for Phase 3A. This is going to ultimately be an 1,100-acre development with some 2,600 to 2,800 units on it. So I thought that as part of the presentation this evening, I would like to have our land planner give a 3 or 4 minute overview. It's a presentation PowerPoint that has been reviewed by Mr. Keller already, but to sort of orient you as to the property and what the ultimate objective is. I realize the issue before you this evening is only this particular phase, but as you heard in the staff report, there are some elements that require your consideration of waivers, and I believe that those waivers will be easier to understand if in fact you see the overview. In addition, we have amended the plat that was submitted and intend to distribute that to you this evening. We shared that with Mr. Keller this morning. We understand that it has not been reviewed by staff and nor by you, but I have color-coded the changes that we made on the plat. It is our view and belief that those changes are very responsive to the waiver request and will make it easier for you to understand what we want and why and what you think about that. So if you're in agreement, we would, I don't know how much time I need, but I would suggest that maybe if I could take at least the 10 and the 5 together, may need to go to 20. I don't believe I'll need rebuttal because I suspect that you will ask the questions that you want to ask of my team, and we can address them at that time.
Given the comprehensive nature of this development, I think it's appropriate to at least begin with 15 minutes, as long as the information provided is relevant to the commission. And again, you're going to give a short PowerPoint presentation as well, or someone within your organization will do so?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That'd be all right?
Yes.
I appreciate that courtesy. Before we begin the PowerPoint presentation, and you guys can come up, please, I did want you to know that this evening, really everyone sitting in the first 3 rows are with the Horton team. We have the Duplantis Design Group, our engineer. We have BG&E, our land planners, who will be making the initial presentation. And then we have various representatives of Horton with us tonight. So if I could, I would like to introduce Juan Cerna to you, our land planner out of Texas, who will make some commentary as he displays this initial PowerPoint. And then I'm going to come back and we will dive into the specific comments for tentative this evening. While that PowerPoint is going out, I am going to ask staff to hand out to you the revised plats. You don't need to look at them yet, but you are going to be interested to see them once I start my commentary. There's one for each of you, and there's one for everybody up there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would also ask the commission at the end of every presentation, given the amount of time it may take, if you have questions, I would ask at that time that you note, and that we will then address that the particular presenter.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Council. My name is Juan Serna. I'm with BG Carey Gilbert Associates from Houston, Texas. Address is 23501 Cinco Ranch Boulevard. Lakeshore Villages is a proposed master plan community consisting of approximately 1,100 acres that was originally part of the Lakeshore development. A couple of features of the existing conditions include 2 primary access points, an existing levee that wraps around the entire development, and 2 existing lakes that will become important components of the overall proposed plan and the Parks and Open Space Plan. The master plan community will include a vibrant community core centrally located and surrounded by neighborhoods of various single-family products. The community will be interconnected through a vast pedestrian vehicular circulation system. A master parks plan is also being developed that will serve as a framework when planning all of the active and passive park components. In addition to the existing levee and lake features, we are proposing to expand the existing system with various fingers, increasing the total open space to approximately 420 acres. Both the levee and canal system will provide a corridor that will allow us to surround the entire development with a 6-mile-long nature trail that will intentionally be left natural in order to provide residents with an opportunity to enjoy their natural surroundings. Internally, we're proposing a community core consisting of a couple community elements, a proposed elementary school site, a recreation center that will include pool, shade structures, playground equipment, a model home park that will include various single-family models, and an information center. It will also be next to a planned sports park that will be adjacent to the proposed elementary school and recreation center to create a very large and multi-use center. Within the planned neighborhoods, we are also planning to have several strategically located neighborhood parks that will all be within walking distance to serve the neighborhoods that surround them. In addition, we will link the planned neighborhoods and parks with a vast network of primary and secondary trails that will enhance connectivity and pedestrian accessibility. The primary trail, which is the one in purple there in the center, is being planned as an 8-foot wide concrete trail that will run parallel to a planned residential loop road. There's no real requirement to implement such a loop road, but we believe that pairing the 2 components will create a multi-use circulation corridor that will provide a safe connection between neighborhoods, community features, for all modes of transportation, whether it's bicycle, pedestrian, or vehicular. Due to the size of the master plan community and the vast park and community features, it is imperative that the community be planned to react to market conditions and also allow us to phase the development as the market dictates. Phase 3 and soon to be Phase 4 will include over 600 single-family residential lots of various lot sizes. Within Phase 3, which we're discussing tonight, we will begin building the first key component to the pedestrian trail network system that will be along the residential loop road that will also connect to the vast recreation facilities that are all being planned as part of the Phase 4, which is coming next. Overall, just as you can see here, it's a fairly large master plan community with all the necessary components of a successful master plan community, as all the others that D.R. Horton has developed over the years and throughout all the markets. But one of the key things to keep in mind here is looking at it, almost a third of the development is proposed as open space. So it's important for us to keep that in mind as we move through the phases and individual cells or neighborhoods.
Does that complete your PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Thank you. This time, I would ask if the commission, if they have any questions for the presenter, to please ask now, or again, throughout the process, we can ask. Any questions at this time? I see none. Mr. Shane.
Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and it perhaps gives you a better feel for the overall plan that Horton has for this development. I think it would be appropriate at this time for me to, now that you have an overview, to address with you the staff comments in particular, certainly those that require a waiver. So with the revised plats that I've handed to you and the staff comments, if we could, I'd like to address item 1 initially, and that's with regard to the public nature of the street. In fairness to the commission, there has not been specific discussion with staff in recent weeks about this particular issue, but I'd like to summarize our position. I'm giving you some documentation that supports that you'll see that was filed some time ago, actually on January 8th. We believe that staff's interpretation of the connecting roads to this phase is mistaken, in that we believe that we have a public road that in fact runs to this particular phase. In particular, the road network includes Oak Harbor, Lake Villages South, Lake Villages East, and that brings you to the perimeter of this particular phase. I believe that there may have been some confusion on staff's part, and understandably so, because there are in fact 2 guardhouses on some of the roads, and in fact there may even be a gate apparatus, albeit open, and there was a belief that perhaps there was a gated area before you got to this phase. So the premise of the proposal to you this evening as it relates to this issue is that we intend for the streets in this phase to be public streets. The parish requires that in order for these streets to be accepted by you as public streets, there must be public streets that connect to it. If there were private streets under the control of others that could be gated off, you would never be, the public would not be able to get to this phase, the parish would not be able to do their job and make repairs and do all of the things that public bodies do to preserve access ways and drainage features. What's interesting about this particular case is that, again, and I emphasize, the route to this phase is in fact public. And the letter that I've given you, the summary of that would be as follows. The road surfaces themselves, once you leave Oak Harbor, are owned by the Community Development District, which is a public body. It's a political subdivision of the state, but they actually built, construct, and continue to own, operate, and maintain the road surface. The road surface is, of course, on a physical right-of-way, a road right-of-way. And that road right-of-way was dedicated by the prior owner, Tammany Holding Corporation, to the parish of St. Tammany. So we respectfully suggest that the comment that the roads leading to this phase being private is erroneous for the reasons I've stated, for the documents that have previously been tendered. The support documents for this proposition are probably 250 pages in length. They're not an easy read, but they've been submitted. Mr. Savant and I have had some discussions late this afternoon on this issue. So unless any of you have specific questions about the road issue, I will move on to the next issue. It may be more convenient if we discuss this issue by issue, as opposed to me going through 4 or 5 issues and then the commission dropping back and asking questions. So, Mr. Chair, whatever your pleasure in that
Well,
regard.
Mr. Shane, with respect to whether this road is private or public, I will ask our counsel to address that so the commission hopefully feels comfortable proceeding relative that we will not and are not charged with making that decision, but counsel may provide some information to us that affords us to continue to proceed without placing that burden on the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Manella. Can the commissioners hear me okay? Okay. Let me begin, I guess, by, after my review this afternoon, I assured Mr. Shane that I read every single word of his 200-something pages of documents this afternoon. I don't know if I've necessarily absorbed it and formulated a full opinion about it all, but I can make a couple of statements that perhaps will assist the commission tonight. And that is, in my opinion, I believe that it is appropriate for the commission to consider tentative approval tonight, even with the road ownership and responsibility for maintenance, et cetera, issue being outstanding, since tentative approval is the approval of a conceptual plan. However, this issue is going to have to be finally resolved before or at the time of preliminary approval, which will be the next step in this process of phase approval. That being said, there are some issues that have to be resolved to parish staff satisfaction, and which of course includes the various parish departments and including the legal department. This presents a unique development because, as Mr. Shane mentioned, there is a community development district within the boundaries of this large development. And a community development district is actually a political subdivision of the state which is created by parish government pursuant to enabling law enabling state law. And years ago, a community development district was created by parish government at the request of the original developer, and a governing board of this district was established. And the main purpose, without getting into a whole lot of detail, of the community development district was for the development of infrastructure within this brand new development. Remember, when this development was first created, it was nothing but marsh. Those of you who were around years ago, and the original developer basically developed the land with the canals into what it essentially is now. But the community development district was used in part for the development of the infrastructure within this development, okay? In order for the community development district to do that work, it had to be granted a servitude or a right to perform work on the property within the development, within the community development district. And that's what was provided to the community development district by the original developer. A right, if you will, via servitude to enter upon the land and to construct and do these improvement works. But that right was not an ownership right, okay? At some later date, what is presented to you tonight is that the developer dedicated / donated the actual land upon which some of the servitude exists to the parish, but in the sense that it was dedicated for public use, wasn't dedicated specifically to St. Tammany Parish government. It was dedicated to public use. And you see that all the time in the subdivisions that you review, that the plats will say the roads within the subdivision are designated or dedicated to public use. Well, that merely conveys ownership of the land within these right-of-ways, whether they be road, drainage, or other, to the public, okay? It still requires an additional step by a public entity to accept it and agree to maintain it before you actually see any maintenance or work within those dedicated right-of-ways being done by a public entity. So when a developer dedicates roads or other right-of-ways or public ways to the public, it still which has been done in this case, it still requires a an acceptance of that dedication by a public entity who's going to maintain it. From what I can tell, that has not yet, and I believe that's part of what staff has stated tonight, that has not yet been done by parish government, okay? The Community Development District has a servitudal right, which gives them a right to make improvements upon the land, but they don't own the land. The dedication by the original developer to the public makes it eligible for acquisition, if you will, by a public entity, namely parish government, but that has not been done yet, okay? So there are some issues that still need resolving pertaining to access and who is going to maintain these roadways, these drainage ways, and whether it's going to be independently done by one public entity or whether it's going to be done through the cooperation of two or more public entities. That remains to be worked out in the details. You also have an interesting twist, and I won't bore you with too much detail because I don't understand all of the details yet myself. When the dedication did occur, it referenced a dedication of roadway that fronts certain lots within a previously developed phase of this subdivision. So in other words, it says, we dedicate this right-of-way between lots whatever to lots whatever, but not in front of lots over here. Well, there hasn't been enough time to iron out all the particulars to map out, if you will, exactly how all that fits in a puzzle, so to speak. So I guess that's a very verbose way of telling you that what has been represented by the new developer's representative tonight, I think for in large part is a good description of a somewhat confusing circumstance. And I think it is sufficient to allow the commission, if it so desires, to proceed with a determination on whether or not to approve a tentative subdivision review tonight or not, in consideration of the other issues that are still to be discussed related to this new phase 3 that is before you tonight.
So in summary, Mr. Savant, this particular matter does not have to be resolved under the tentative phase, but it will need to be resolved for us to proceed beyond the preliminary phase, correct?
That would be my recommendation.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Willie?
One question of Mike. This CDD that you're talking about as far as doing the maintenance of the infrastructure and all that, is that a self-taxing district as well? Or to generate the funds? I mean, it seems like that would be part of something.
believe, I'm not I'm not an expert on particulars of this particular community development district, Mr. Willie, but how they are generally structured is a community development district issues bonds, basically borrows monies to enable it to pay for and build infrastructure. And then those bonds are essentially paid off as properties within the community development districts are sold and taxes, if you will, or fees are assessed the property owners to pay off those bonds.
So the community would pretty much pay for itself, based on taxes, fees, bonds, or whatever.
Right, like
Okay.
hypothetically, the community development district might have, say, $10 million in bonds, whatever it is, outstanding, that are probably being paid. And they're being paid with funds that are received from the property owners
okay.
within the community development
Okay.
district.
Thank you.
Mr. Manila,
Yes.
if I could,
Yes, Mr. Shane.
not to beat a dead horse, I now know that Mr. Savant did read all 250 pages this afternoon, but.
It's good.
Because we heard a really good opinion. No, but I appreciate the fact that he looked at it. Only 2 points before we move on. The Community Development District is a public district. It is self-sustaining 100%. So it's our position, not that we ask you to make the decision this evening, but that the right-of-way, the land, has in fact been dedicated to the parish, and that the road surface is owned, controlled, maintained, and operated by a public body that is self-sustaining as well. And that's why we believe that the roads are public leading to Phase 3. But we look forward to working with Mr. Savant's staff and eventually coming back to you as a commission when this issue is further developed, has been further discussed, and I'm confident we're going to find a good solution on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Please proceed.
Okay. As to item 2, top of page 2, it will be important for you to take a look at the plat that I have delivered to you this evening, and I ask that you look at Lakeshore Village North, which is the largest north-south road running right down the center of the development. And I'll wait till everybody gets it open, and I think I can better explain to you what we're doing at that particular, with this particular issue. The plan that you had in your packet and that you may have looked at home showed a total of 29 lots. If you started, you see the orange 517, and you see running due north or up to 540. Those lots today now number 24 lots total. There were 29 50-foot lots. So when we saw the staff comment, we met with Mr. Keller. We discussed some possibilities as to how we might better satisfy staff's concern. And it's essentially the number of driveways or the points of entry that enter into this major collector. So in lieu of creating 100-foot wide lots, which we don't think is appropriate, we did a couple of things. Number one, by increasing lot width from 50 to 60, we reduced the number of lots from 29 to 24. Number two, we took the driveways on each lot, and rather than letting them be, if you will, somewhat scattered or haphazard, where you would have 24 points of entry into the road, take a look at what we've done in pink. And we've shown you that the driveways will be side by side, separated by a property line, a boundary line. But these series of driveways will be, if you will, every other lot line. So if you take a look at the pink, you'll see that they're in clusters of 2, and you'll see that there are 12 clusters, if you will, 12 points of entry. So what we ask you to do this evening as it relates to this item is grant a waiver, understanding that lots are wider, number of lots are diminished, points of entry have been diminished from potentially 29 meaning that none of those driveways had to be side by side. Now we have driveways that are always coupled. It's not a common drive. I don't want you to think that it's a master drive over the property line. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is that I think probably the concerns of safety, which are understandable, had there been 29 points of entry, have been significantly mitigated. Those are essentially the comments I have as it relates to this issue. If there are any questions that you want me to address now, I'd be glad to.
Commissioner Lauren?
If you'd look at the map that you gave us, and let's just arbitrarily pick out one, 524, how are you going to designate or restrict the owner to only being able to build on that one place, his driveway?
That'll be easy. We can mandate through restrictive covenant that the only place that the driveway can be located is at that location.
It'd be kind of like the culvert requirements.
Yeah, it would certainly be, it would be critical that that be on the final plat so that those are designated drive areas.
Dedicated.
Yes, sir. Well, designated, not dedicated to the parish by any means, but designated as per covenant so that no one would be able to arbitrarily decide to put the driveway somewhere else.
Well, I can picture somebody coming to you and saying, my house plan won't fit with the driveway on that side. I want to put it, on the
Yes.
other side.
And one of the things I should mention that, that you're aware of, I'm certain, but one of the interesting things here is that Horton is not only the owner of the land, not only the developer of the land, but they're going to be the builder, the general contractor of all of the structures as well, all of the homes. So you don't have a situation where you or I could buy a lot and decide that we're going to put the driveway elsewhere. These products will be built by Horton. But to ensure your concern, those driveway locations can in fact be restricted on the plat.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
A question for staff. Do you like that idea?
We understand that they're trying to mitigate the issue. We took another look at it. As you recall in my staff report, I recommended that the lots be doubled in size to get 100-foot frontage. The idea roughly is to get a driveway every 100 feet apart or roughly in that area.
Right.
By doing some calculation, by trying to get to that point, if they were to increase the lot size to 75 feet, and by applying these adjacent points of access for every 2 lots, they would get 102 feet, which I think the staff would be satisfied with. And again, the concern is that this is just a microcosm of what's going to happen out there. This is only 287 lots out of a potential of 2,000 or more lots, possibly some commercial activities, I'm not sure. But this is going to be a major collector road. And if we're going to set a precedent on allowing direct access onto a major collector, we need to be careful on how we set that precedent for the future of this project.
Jeff, I kind of agree with what was just stated about that because this is going to be the main artery going through this section and stuff like this. So with the staff's information about going to possibly a 75-foot lot, that's something you might want to consider.
Well, we, with all due respect, we think that the safety issue, and that's really the issue at hand, can be, I guess, mitigated through the 60-foot lot. I haven't done the calculations as to how many lots we'd have if we went to 75 feet. I'm guessing we would lose about 1/4 of the 24 lots that we have planned, but that may be bad math. We can take a look at that, but I don't think it's going to be meaningful in terms of the differential. But I certainly understand staff's comment. I realize that they didn't get the drawing until this morning, as I said earlier. And again, it's our job to present to you what we think is a better plan that ensures safety. And also, I think the emphasis needs to be not so much on lot width, but points of entry. And by having these driveways designated on the plat, so that they have to be in pairs along the property line. I would ask you to consider that to perhaps be the most important factor as it relates to the safety issue.
Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, Jeff, what you just stated was kind of leading to my question. I know that's the main artery, but, you know, like New Basin Road, especially lots 424 to 428, those lots, you know, that road, that section of that road, you know, there's a lot of homes being served by that section. Would that concept of the double road, double driveway concept be instituted in other parts of this subdivision?
We haven't contemplated it.
It seemed like you saying safety was the thing of the being the double driveway. It seemed like that would be something you would consider.
We haven't contemplated it, and I guess that's something we can talk about. We understand why there should be a concern on a major collector. We're not so sure that those concerns are as critical on obviously roads that don't carry as many.
Well, maybe not the entire roads, but in sections of it where, like, say that 424 to 428, that serves a lot more, maybe serves as many lots as the main collector.
Understood, and maybe, again, that's something that we can look at throughout the rest of the development.
Thank you.
Again, tentative is a very important stage, but as you know, we also have the opportunity between tentative and preliminary to incorporate your thoughts and try to make improvements or changes that we think are reflective of what you and staff are most concerned about.
Please proceed.
So to item 3, maybe at this time. To refresh your memory, this is the comment with regard to the recreation property, green space, active areas. I'd like to make a few general comments, and then we'll bore down into the details. If you'll remember in the presentation, what did Juan talk to us about as it relates to some amenity features? We have roughly a third of the project is set aside. If I remember correctly, 450 plus or minus acres. You'll remember that we have a 6-mile ring path around the levee, which is there. You'll remember that we have an 8-foot wide hard surface, probably concrete, if you will, connector, a pedestrian connector. You'll remember that purple ring that he showed us with inside the development, which will connect all of the phases. So it's one of the reasons I wanted you to show you tonight the overall conceptual is that you would understand that it's a little hard in our view to necessarily provide all of the recreation or amenity in any one particular phase. We don't dispute Mr. Keller's calculation or what the code requires, but this is what we would ask you to consider. Number one, you're going to see a more detailed recreation development plan when we come to you at preliminary. That's part of your package, not at tentative. Number two, you have already been made privy to the 6-mile passageway, if you will, recreation path around the ring of the levee. Number three, you've already been exposed to the hard surface purple connector throughout. Then I'd like you to take a look at the plat that I provided you this evening, and you can imagine what the green colors connote. And we would suggest to you that the green areas are in fact meaningful and do in fact provide some real active recreation opportunity for the people in this phase. It doesn't mean that it will preclude them from using the amenities in the other phase. One of the things that we want you to see and understand is that 8-foot wide hard surface that I talked about, you'll see the first phase of it running along Lakeshore Village North. And that's the green that overlaps the pink. You know, we just looked at the pink driveways discussing the last issue. So if you find those pink driveways, you'll see that green strip, and that's to tell you that's where that network will begin. So we feel that if you look at all of the various components, particularly the recreation and open areas that will be brought to you in Phase 4, we are certainly understanding that you can't depend on Phase 4, but the commitment we make to you is that before we seek final subdivision approval for Phase 3, we will have preliminary subdivision approval, we hope, with regard to Phase 4, which means you will have seen that recreation and green space package. That is a summary of our comments as it relates to that issue, Mr. Manella.
Thank you. If you'll continue to hit the highlights, we've now been given a 30-minute presentation.
Sorry about that.
And so, no, we appreciate that with questions, so
Sure.
if you would continue to hit the highlights.
Hopefully it'll be a little faster from here. I think we would agree, looking at staff comments on page 2, that items 4 and 5, we can comply with those and don't bear discussion. We understand and accept those comments. Item 6 is with regard to block length, and actually, I guess, the cul-de-sac length, maybe more properly, of 700 feet. And so what I would suggest to you is that if you'll remember the overview that we gave you initially, Phase 4 sits right on top or north of Phase 3, so that when we do Phase 4, you'll see that Lakeshore Village North will continue, and there'll in fact be an intersection once we get into Phase 4. So this is not going to be just a long road that goes to nowhere. That's in fact why we've indicated a temporary cul-de-sac on the north end of Lakeshore Village North. And it's because we know that we're going to continue into Phase 4, and as I said, there will be a significant major intersection in Phase 4. So we would ask that you grant a waiver as to that issue based on those reasonings. Item 7 talks about minimum lot frontage on the cul-de-sac. Again, if you'll look at the color codes, the only lots that come into play are the lots that bear the color blue. Those are the only lots that do not meet code requirement. But what we would suggest to you is that in Phase 1A, which is already approved and built out, you'll remember that is in the southeasterly sector when you looked at the overall. The average lot width on lots in the cul-de-sac in Phase 1A that you approved is 33.41 feet. In this instance, you can see that most of our widths suggest running around the 37-foot range. So we don't believe that this waiver is inordinate, inappropriate, and in fact, we think that the lot widths in the cul-de-sacs actually are a little larger than the lot widths in the cul-de-sacs in the prior Phase 1A that you have approved. Item 8, we've referred to the Recreation Development Plan already, and again, you will see that detailed plan. I believe that the rest of the commission, I should say staff comments, of course, they enumerate on page 3 the 4 waivers that are sought this evening, which requires 2/3 vote. That's cul-de-sac length, 60-foot minimum lot width on the cul-de-sacs, the minimum green space requirements, and the driveway cuts on the corners, which actually I'll now move to under the engineering comments. And the only engineering comment of relevance this evening would be item 2. Item 1 we certainly will comply with. Item 3 is TIA, which can be dealt with at preliminary. And as it relates to item 2, I'm sure you guys see this request more than you care to. It's not something new, but there are obviously certain situations where the driveways, quite frankly, need to be closer to the intersection than code allows. We've tried to show you where those are, and we would appreciate the waiver that you sometimes deem fit to be appropriate when this issue is presented to you. The items under the subdivision plat 4 and 5 are not problematic and things that we can comply with. During the course of the presentation, I also passed out to you a letter dated January 16th, which we hoped to file that morning. We misunderstood and thought that staff would accept our letter before 10 o'clock that day. As it turns out, it was a moot point because you could not meet on the night of January 16th because of ice. But that letter is a more up-to-date, if you will, discussion of the waiver requirements. It supersedes, if you will, the January 9th letter that is noted in the staff report and which I assume was included in your packet. Mr. Manella, I know I've taken more time than typical. I appreciate that courtesy. At this point, I'm going to hush up and let you and the commission tell us what else we can do to give you good answers.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Shane. This time I would ask if there's anyone in the public who wishes to speak in opposition to any of the presentation. Seeing none at this time, I close it to the public and I will bring it to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Some of us are accountants, some of us are engineers. Very few of us are lawyers up here. I'm really hung up on that initial question about the legalities of whether or not it's public land or not. And I understand the discussion that we can go ahead and approve it. And wait until preliminary before we give final, or we go beyond it. But I would like to see this get resolved between you, the staff, and Mr. Savant or whoever, so that that's not an issue when we get to that point. This commission is not, I don't think any of us up here would say we're qualified to start ruling on legal issues. And I think it would be a vast mistake for anybody to go in and start spending a great deal of money only to have it thrown out in court later. Okay?
Yes, sir. Appreciate your comment, and we certainly understand the importance of that issue, and we will endeavor to have clarification when we come back to you for preliminary. I guess in that regard, if the commission sees fit to move on the case this evening, if that motion includes an exception as it relates to the access issue to be resolved at the time of preliminary, we certainly understand and respect that, so that in no way would a recommendation this evening perhaps be implicitly suggest that the access issue has been resolved, if that suits the commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, this is just a beautiful plan, but everything that we're asked to do a waiver on, the frontage, the distance, to me, all deals with the number of lots that I know I have a problem with, the size of the lots and the number of the lots. And I've been here since the inception of this plan, when I realized where it was and how they started it years ago with the canals. And I think if we could start backwards and put all the infrastructure in and everything in, and then the houses, but I know that's not feasible. And I know that you need a certain amount of homes to be able to put those amenities in. But I have a problem with the cul-de-sac, and like I said, just the number of homes and the size of them, that if we could increase the frontage and the lot sizes a little bit more, then I think that I would be able to be on board with us.
May I address that comment, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may.
Well, I understand your comment, maybe a few things that I didn't do a good job of and should have mentioned on the front end. As you know, of course, the density was set for this PUD long ago. It may have been in the beginning of your tenure on this commission. That doesn't mean that density is not a relevant discussion, but I would tell you that to measure whether or not the density is appropriate, in part, will depend on the review that staff makes of the TIA and the review that the staff ultimately makes of the hydrology plan as it relates to whether or not the impacts of development are adequately dealt with here. And somewhat interestingly, as it relates to this development, if you're familiar with Oak Harbor Boulevard, I-10, and the connecting roads, Lake Village North, Lake Village East, you probably have the finest roads in terms of width, capacity, et cetera, that you may have for any subdivision that you have considered, maybe ever. That's a pretty big statement to make. But the point is that I think that this development is infrastructure rich. You also have a unique component of having a public body, the CDD, that not only owns, operates, but is legally obligated to provide the adequate infrastructure so that the situations that you sometimes face with where's the money going to come from to make the road wider, or where is the money going to come from to make sure that this property drains, and that's another point I didn't bring out earlier, but I think it should be evident to you, this is within an entire ringed area. And so for the most part, it's really immune, for the most part, from the traditional concerns that you might have about flood from waters outside the ring. This is obviously an area that is protected in its entirety. So I understand your...
I'd like to, for the record, I'm not an engineer, but I really feel like this development, not this one particular, but how the infrastructure was already put in when Mr. Torres and them were there, I really feel like that part saved Slidell from Hurricane Katrina, that if it had been the marsh that it was, there wouldn't have been anything to slow it down. But with even though they weren't that high in the ring and of levees and stuff that were there, it's just, I guess it's seeing so many, and then what if you're not able to complete the next phases and stuff with the green space? Is there any way that you can assure us that if something happens, that the developer will go back or ensure that the people that have bought into phase one would have green space? I know they can see a long-term thing, but how long and
Right.
so on?
Sure, I think there are ways to do that, and again, I don't mean to dodge your
I
comment,
understand.
but remember, this is tentative, this is conceptual. I think a lot of the fine details as it relates to some of these concerns can and should be addressed either at preliminary, so that you will see that the assurances are there, or as I discussed earlier with regard to driveway locations, will be also noted on the final plat. So I'm hoping that we can develop assurances that would meet a lot of the concerns that you might have.
Do we have to do, would have to do these waivers, though, before we could get to tentative? And that's, I think,
A tentative,
what
though,
some
does
of us.
not, a tentative, though, does not assure that you would grant us preliminary subdivision approval.
If we went back and we still had these same problems with the green space, that, at that point?
You wouldn't have to grant through,
Pardon?
you wouldn't, each one is separate. So once we get to preliminary, if
We still don't
issues
like
have
the
not
green,
been
we still
addressed.
don't like these issues, these 4 waivers, then we can address it there.
Certainly,
So it's
certainly.
not like the number of lots, though, that go in at tentative, they're locked in still. This is not a PUD, though, right?
It is a
It
PUD.
is a PUD, so we have to lock in.
So as
So
Mr. Shane
the
already said,
thing
the
is-
The density
density
was
has already
Created
been
a long time ago,
established
yeah.
under the PUD.
Right,
Density,
yeah. Yeah,
it's, the density is 8 units per acre.
well,
So it doesn't mean that I'm not respectful of
right.
the consequence of development. But again, what I'm suggesting is that, and if staff or legal disagree, Your grant of tentative does not assure or guarantee the developer that you will grant preliminary. And if you are not satisfied, and that's why I emphasize, once you have staff comments as it relates to the traffic study, which not only deals with volume, but circulation and safety issues, and also the drainage plan, the hydrology. I mean, there are a lot of things you need to see at preliminary, which hopefully would give you comfort that the concept that you might consider this evening is in fact good development.
Well, I feel that it is a very good plan. I love the plan, and I guess it's just the phases and stuff, that if you're saying that we can address the concerns of the waivers at preliminary, and we need more information on the by that time, I think, will we have information on the
I think you
street?
misunderstood.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna have to
The
address the
waivers-
waivers this evening.
Yeah,
Yes,
the waivers that
yes,
would be
I
granted
understand
would
that,
carry
but
forward.
what I'm saying is it's not locked in. But you're saying it's not locked in tonight. If I grant the waivers, I make a motion to approve granting these waivers on these 4 items, you're saying we can still address?
No. Those
Okay,
waivers are
you
granted
see?
throughout the
No,
entire.
I know they're addressed. I mean, I know that, but we can change it in some of the.
No. For
Well, that's what
example-
I was asking, and y'all were saying that we could see it,
No.
look at this at
No,
preliminary.
the waivers that would be granted tonight, any and all, would be carried on through the development phase. So if we afforded them the 700 feet beyond, that they'll continue to develop with that as part of
As
their
part of-
basis.
So what would we be looking at preliminary? The number of lots, the traffic of this feeder road, is going to work with the number of houses that are on it?
Right, the traffic impact study, the hydrology studies, all of that would continue. But any waivers that we would grant at this phase would be carried throughout the entire.
Okay.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm not that crazy about granting all 4 of these waivers, to be honest. And especially now that, I know Martha, I think that's Martha's major concern too, and probably the rest of the commission up here as well. Another question here about the green space, especially on the lots that are lining Lakeshore Village North, that little green line you got coming all the way down, that's gonna be, I guess, a sidewalk or something, or?
Yeah, the 8-foot wide walkway
Yeah, 8-foot wide walkway.
that connects the entire development.
Okay, so individuals' driveway will be crossing over these. Is that part of the green space?
Well, no, was not suggesting that it's formal green space. I was only suggesting that it is part of the active recreation area,
Okay.
as was shown you on the overview when we started. It will be part of the purple connector network.
Yeah.
That's the big ring that connects the development. So, I mean, I wanted you to see that as we develop those lots, we're gonna do this in components. I think it's more than just the pods of green space. Just like I think, how do you disregard the 6 miles of walkway that you have around the levee? And if I could be allowed just one more editorial comment, I think that if there was ever a parcel that is susceptible for handling not only this density, but this type of development, this is it. What are the things that you typically need to worry about when you'd be looking at something like this? Would often be adjoining subdivisions, concerns of neighbors, inadequate drainage, inadequate roads, lack of infrastructure. We really don't have any of those elements before us, and you're not going to. This developer and owner owns the entirety of everything within the ring. So my point is, I think that when we get you the more sophisticated studies, I think you're gonna have a comfort level that this density and this design works at this location. At least that's my hope.
Yeah, now, another thing about is the PUD, as far as the PUD goes, there's really not much diversity in any of these lots. Do you agree with that? They all look like about the same size, except for the ones on the far east and in the far west. They all look about the same size.
I would agree, but remember now, the PUD is huge. And if we need.
I understand that, but again, if we start piecemealing the PUD individually like this in phases, and I think we've had problems in this in the past, you know, with going from phase 1, it looked good, phase 2, maybe a little bit smaller, phase 3, we were hoping it got bigger, but it stayed as small. So I'm having just a little problem in just saying, okay, let's grant tentative subdivision plat with 4 major waivers. That's my question. I mean, that's my concern, that's all.
Well, remember that, again, the PUD overall not only includes single-family residential, but it has other uses as well.
No, I do.
And so, just as I said, it's hard to evaluate the amount of green in this phase. It's likewise difficult to suggest that this is the only thing that you're going to see throughout that
Please be
subdivision.
seated. At which time one of the commissioners will address you, or you can go through your counsel, but otherwise we would ask you be seated and maintain the integrity of the commission. Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Shane.
No other comments, sir, at this time.
Commissioner Willie.
Okay, back to the waivers, Jeff. I don't have a problem with the cul-de-sac length waiver. And I have a problem with the 60-foot setback corner lot waiver. And I guess, you know, we either can grant the waiver, or we could ask you to have larger lots on those corners so you could fit into the parish requirement, or possibly maybe limit the driveway cuts to the long side of those lots. I don't know if that would satisfy parish requirements.
You talking about like a rear load?
Like, say, like side load.
Or side load, rather?
Instead of using the 35 or the 50-foot side of the lot, use the 90-foot side of the lot for a driveway cut on those corner lots. I don't know if that's possible in this plan or not,
Like this, right?
or larger lots, you know, on those corners. But I do have a problem with the 60-foot requirement.
Can I interject real quick?
Yes.
The issue, like if you look on the lots that are on the east side, we had, again, to try to limit the amount of access onto the major collector, we requested a 5-foot no access servitude along there. So obviously, if they have to meet the corner lot requirement of 60 feet, they couldn't meet it for some of those lots unless you do let them do side loading, which then would allow them to have new driveway cuts onto the major collector. So, I don't know if engineering has any big issues with that, but I would rather let them cut a driveway in on a side street a little bit closer than 60 feet from the intersection, as opposed to allow them to have another driveway cuts directly onto the major collector. I think that'd be something engineering would have to address.
That may be best on that side of the development, but on the other side, it may be, again, might could use the side load.
Yeah, that would be fine, yeah.
Yeah, so something to think about.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'm typically one that has a problem with the cul-de-sac length, and this one I'm good with. I see the bigger picture, no issue. I don't have an issue with the green space requirement. Again, I see the bigger issue. Off-street parking is a problem. If we all had 35 feet, we'd have a problem. That we can only stack in driveways, and anybody comes to visit you, there's really just not enough room. So I'm a little concerned about the cul-de-sac widths across the front. If they were uniform, if they had a little bit of variation, it might work better. But, I mean, obviously planners understand this and can figure it out. But I know what we're trying to do and get here. It's kind of a cross between density and what we're asking for in lot frontage. And I know that's the chicken and an egg issue, and that's where we're having a little struggle. But on the other issues to the commission, I'm fine with it. And if there's any possible wiggle room here on the lot length, the lot size, as far as frontage, I think that would give us a lot more comfort.
Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Yeah, Jeff, my biggest concern, it sounds like we all have different concerns, there we go, is the driveways on the collector road. But may I suggest 528 and 529, side load, and I still think you're gonna have to pull 1 or 2 lots out from that roadway. I just think you have to. I don't think the commissioners are gonna go for it as it is right now. Just my 2 cents. But if you side load there, pull 1 out, I think you might be able to get the distance you need.
Thank you for the comment.
Any further comments?
Miss-
Mr. Shane? Yes.
I think Mr. Drum had just asked for the floor. Oh,
Mr. Drum, Commissioner Drum.
I know we haven't gotten to the traffic mitigation area because we haven't gotten to that point. But looking down the road, has your developer looked at Howes Beach Road? Because, you know, you're looking at what, 2,000 houses or family units going in here? And that road right now is a little busy because of all those dealerships that are along there. Have they considered maybe some type of traffic system or like there, and then the other area as well? Are you gonna put traffic circles inside by the elementary school, or is that gonna be stop signs? I mean, these are just things that are going through my head. It's not as detailed as theirs.
no, but your points are well made, but that's why I wanted to give you a conceptual overview.
Right.
We've got land planners and, of course, a very sophisticated owner-developer here that need to think out each of the elements that you're talking about. And so, although, yes, we have plans that are being formulated as it relates to the rest of the project, certainly our current emphasis is on this particular phase. Mr. Manella, if I could?
Yes, sir.
In listening to your comments tonight and knowing you as a body, I appreciate the study that you've given the case this evening. It seems to me that because you were given an awful lot of data with, in some respects, very short notice, meaning you saw a revised plan tonight, you got some letters that you hadn't seen before. Staff has been more than cooperative in that they have no way to comment because they're looking at it at first impression as well. I think that we would prefer to postpone this case this evening and come back to you in February. And in the meantime, my hope would be is that we would meet with staff to try to continue to talk about some of these issues. And perhaps, you know, there are some matters that can be clarified, as certainly as it relates to the public nature of the roads leading to the subdivision. But I think you know me pretty well. I've heard each of you very clearly as to what you've said. So I will take those comments into consideration when I meet with my client and our consultants. So we would respectfully request a postponement.
Commissioner Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Shane. You were reading my mind. I felt for certain that we could move forward tonight, but I was concerned about getting the two-thirds on at least a couple of those issues, and I don't think it makes sense to get it piecemeal. I think you need to see it as a whole, so I appreciate that, and I think it's something we can work out. I really do. This is a great development. Please don't take our concerns as being negative. With that said, I'll move to postpone for 1 month.
Motion by Commissioner Richard to postpone for 1 month. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Drum.
All the canals done and finished? No more digging, trenching, or anything like that?
Well, in this particular phase, no, I think will there be any more later? Yeah, they'll be expanded within this phase.
Okay, because you know the last time when they were digging them out, it messed up the crabbing pretty bad.
Well, if that's the case, I think I know where some hampers of crabs are. So we'll see what we can do.
We have a lot of crabs up here.
Just my comment is, I think overall the development is very appropriate, especially for that area. Like many of the commissioners, I'm very familiar with that area, with Mr. Torres's master plan represented with one of his lead executives tonight as well. But I think you've heard from the commission that there are a few concerns that we have, having seen on an ongoing basis. The over 700 feet, they put in roundabouts that afford that slowing down. We've been involved with several that way as well. But again, I think from the commission, the comments being made from each of the commissioners, we think this is a very appropriate development. And I think, again, according to Mr. Shane, to go back and revisit, and now that it has been addressed, any type of public meetings, though this is fairly much self-contained, that commissioners could attend as well and continue to work out with the staff. We would hope that next month when we readdress this, that these issues have been addressed and concerns levied so that we can continue to move forward. With that being said, we do have a motion by Commissioner Richard to postpone for 1 month, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Again, thank you all for your time. I think this will go down on record to be our longest single case. We'll give you a few moments to clear as we continue to move through the agenda. We shall proceed. Preliminary subdivision review, 2017-882-PP. Gust Island Estates, parcel D1, The Oaks, Ward 1, District 4. Developer owner, McInt LLC. Engineer, Kelly McHugh and Associates LLC. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Michael Lorino. Staff.
Preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office.
You're on.
Preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and an inspection of the site was made. It's recommended that the preliminary submittal be approved subject to the following general comments. 1, the fill and grading statement submitted to this office was not completed correctly. The document needs to be completed, signed, and returned to this office. Number 2, the property is south of I-12 and in the state designated coastal zone. Coastal use permit application is required. Typical lot build-out plan can be provided with the coastal use application in order to exempt individual home lot developers from the coastal use permit application requirement. Number 3, all applicable state, local, and federal permits required for this project must be provided on the sewer and water plan. Number 4, revise the sewer main slopes to meet the minimum recommended design standards. Number 5, provide the slope for the 10-inch sewer main at the west end of Fox Sparrow Loop. Number 6, the water and sewer main crossings at the intersection of Rock Dove Drive and House Sparrow Drive must be revised. The drainage cross culvert at this location is set at 8.9 feet, while the invert elevation of the sewer main is 8.2 feet. Additionally, the water and sewer main crossings at each of the 4 intersections cannot provide for both the 18-inch clearance between the water and sewer main and the 3-foot minimum cover between the ground and the top of the water main. Revise these conflicts. Informational items, a funded maintenance obligation in the amount of $10,000 is required in accordance with subdivision ordinance 125, section 125-201, funded letters of credit for existing parish roads to ensure the repair of any damage to a parish road resulting from the construction in connection with the subdivision. No mandatory developmental fee is required at final submittal in accordance with ordinance 125 since a public hearing was held prior to January 1, 2005. The developer is hereby advised that upon application for final subdivision approval, the engineer of record for this development shall certify in writing that all aspects of construction have been completed in accordance with the approved plans and parish ordinances. If any construction activity is proposed that's not in substantial compliance with the approved plans and parish ordinances, the engineer of record for the development shall notify in writing the Department of Development prior to beginning said construction activity. The developer and/or engineer of record shall obtain written approval from the Department of Development prior to beginning any proposed construction activity that's not in substantial compliance with the approved plans and parish ordinances. Revised drawings will not be accepted prior to the January 25th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting to ensure that any additional comments at the meeting can be incorporated into the revised plans.
Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, and I represent the owner and developer. We're in full accord with all staff comments. Any of those comments that require action, we are prepared and will make as directed in the staff comments. We respectfully request that you grant preliminary subdivision approval at this time. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them at the proper time.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
I joyously make a motion to approve. And one thing I do find that's very interesting in this little area, you have fox sparrow and you have rock dove and house sparrow. Then you have ringneck drive. That's interesting.
Good.
Just had a curse there, but I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Davis to approve. Commissioner Lauren.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Lauren. Any further comments?
Yes, sir. I might change some street names in the prayer.
We have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve, second by Commissioner Lauren. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Final subdivision review, 2017-883-FP. Springhaven, Phase 2, Ward 1, District 4. Developer owner, Springhaven LLC. Engineer, Kelly McHugh and Associates, Inc. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Michael Lorino. Staff.
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction, and final inspection was made on December 21st, 2017. The inspection disclosed that all of the asphalt roads are constructed, road shoulders are constructed, and the roadside ditches are functional. The following uncompleted items existed at the time of final inspection and will be completed before the plats are signed. General comments: number 1, an as-built signage plan needs to be provided for this phase. Number 2, asphalt test results are needed. Number 3, the Army Corps of Engineers permit in our file has expired on September 30th, 2012. Provide an update as to the status of this permit. Number 4, all pond areas and required ditches should be clearly shown as being within a drainage servitude. Number 5, a negative bacteriological report relative to the construction of the project's water system has not yet been issued by LDH as required by Chapter 125, Section 202 of subdivision regulations. Number 6, a letter of acceptance and responsibility for the perpetual maintenance and operation of the water and sewer system has not yet been issued by the utility provider. On the subdivision plat, number 7, the parking area and pool area should be shown on the final plat and labeled as such. Number 8, label the strip of land behind lots 1 through 31. Number 9, note 1 on the final plat is in conflict with the restrictive covenant number 6, revised to eliminate the conflict. Number 10, the drainage servitude between lots 37 and 38 needs to be called out on the final plat in all applicable sheets. 11, provide in the dedication statement that the HOA will own and maintain all street signs, traffic control signs, and signposts. Number 12, dedication statement calls for this phase to be privately owned. Verify if this is correct, as the roads in Phase 1 of the subdivision are publicly owned and maintained. Paving and drainage plan. 13, call out the material of the existing weir structure. 14, indicate where the strip of land behind lots 1 through 31 drains. 15, provide target culvert elevations for lots 34 through 37. 16, revise lot 39 drainage arrows to show that it will not drain onto lot 131. 17, remove the duplicate culvert information. On the as-built sewer and water plan, Number 18, revise the sheet to include a water service connection for Lot 33. 19, subdivision boundary on the as-built water and sewer plan differs from the footprint shown on other plan sheets. Revise the footprint to address this conflict. Number 20, the sewer force main crossing the drainage ditch north of Pond 2 is completely exposed and must be relocated before final plats can be signed. Under comments, should the Planning Commission approve the request for final subdivision approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of 2,250 linear feet at $22 per linear foot for $49,500 for a period of 5 years. The staff recommends approval of the final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments, and no plats are to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. Mandatory developmental fees are as follows. Road impact fee, $1,077 per lot for 41 lots for a total of $44,157. Drainage impact fee, $1,114 per lot for 41 lots for $45,674. Fees are due before the subdivision plats can be signed, and the subdivision is within the urban growth boundary line, and revised drawings will not be accepted prior to the January 25th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting to ensure that any additional comments established at the meeting can be incorporated into the revised plans.
Thank you. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of Autumn Creek 2 LLC. Most of the comments that Mr. Watson just read into the record are plat revisions, and all of those are being worked on by Mr. McHugh and his staff. There are a few more substantive items that I'd like to address and give you an update on. The first of which is under the general comments, and it's the asphalt test results. We expected to have those test results in today. We have not yet received them, but the cores have been taken. They've been submitted to the lab, and we expect those back any day now. As with regards to the core permit, in fact, the permit was extended through 2005. All of the work within phases 1 and 2 within the wetlands area have been completed, and the entire wetlands on the entire site have been mitigated. So we are in the process of working with the Corps to extend that permit for Phase 3. But again, all of the wetlands have been permitted and were mitigated with all the mitigation fees paid. The negative bacteriological report has been received, and we were told as of today that the only thing that is lacking Tammany Utilities with regards to the issuance of the letter of acceptance are 3 copies of the as-built plans, which we're in the process of delivering to them either this afternoon or will be delivered in the morning. So we expect that letter of acceptance within a matter of days. On page 3, comment 20 regarding the sewer force main being exposed in the ditch. This sewer force main in question is actually part of Phase 1, as was this part of the ditch that it crossed. In constructing Phase 2, the ditch had to be excavated further and deepened, which exposed the sewer force main. So as is noted, that sewer force main needs to be lowered. It is, in fact, Tammany Utilities' main at this point. We have been in contact with them. They are advised that we're prepared to lower that, and that work has been scheduled for Tuesday of next week. So we expect that to be completed next week as well, and the pipe will be back to the depth that is required. Otherwise, all of the other comments, again, are plat revisions. We will comply with those as set forth in the staff report. So we would respectfully request your approval of final, subject to all the staff comments and my further clarification on a few of those points this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Richard.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to compliance with all staff comments.
Motion by Commissioner Richard to approve. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further comments? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Richard to approve, subject to all staff comments. Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Amendments to Chapter 125 subdivision regulations, we have none. Old business. Penn Mill Place, Ward 3, District 3. Engineer Kelly McHugh and Associates, Inc. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable James Red Thompson. Request by developer surveyor to add private drainage servitudes and revised driveway setbacks on corner lots. Staff?
Honorable Commissioners, the act of correction by Kelly McHugh has been reviewed by this office and is acceptable. It's recommended that it be approved so that it can be executed by Parish President and recorded.
Mr. Shane?
No comments, Mr. Chair, unless there are questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Commissioner Willie.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Willie. Any further comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Second by Commissioner Willie. Please vote.
Motion carries.
New business, a request for review and approval by the Planning Commission for the master property ownership plat for Robert L. Torres Sr. that includes the original tracts A, B, C, and D located in sections 25, 26, 27, 33, 34, 35, and 36. Township 9 South, Range 14 East, in sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 11. Township 10 South, Range 14 East, Ward 9, District 13. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Michelle Blanchard. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to read the letter. Is my mic on? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
Should be.
I'd like to read the letter that was put in the packet that was dated January 9, 2018 regarding this new business item. Dear Commissioners, the owner of the above captioned parcels would like the Planning Commission to approve his property ownership plat map and subsequent recordation thereof in the public records for same, so that said plat can be used as a template for future development and the selling of parcels. I know that the survey in your packet doesn't do any justice whatsoever you can't see anything. That's why the petitioner has some very large maps that he can kind of show you what they're trying to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Wayne A. Collier, 1137 Marina Drive, Slidell, Louisiana. We have a problem of scale, obviously, because the 11 by 17 is a reduction of this rather large, and this is only a fourth of the document. In substance, this may seem large, but it's really quite simple. Tammany Holding Company in 1996 purchased 2,900 acres of property. We worked with the parish government and, in fact, subdivided the property into Lakeshore Estates residential development, Lakeshore Villages residential development. And over the course of the 20 years, we also sold property by meets and bounds, which at that time was permitted by law. The problem that resulted as of this date is that there is no plat in the public record where one can physically locate all of these parcels that have been acquired, reacquired, subdivided. So what we're asking the commission to do today is to approve this ownership plat. All it does is reflect the parcels that have been sold, and on the ownership plat, we have identified each and every parcel by instrument number in the public record, and we have assigned for the first time a unique parcel designation for the remainder of the property that we own. About 1,250 acres of it you dealt with for about an hour this morning with D.R. Horton. The balance of the property is approximately 950 acres, and our request of you is to approve this application so that we may record this plat in the public record. And going forward, we have been besieged by title examiners, by abstractors, by people who do title insurance to point out that this would be a very helpful and beneficial addition to the record, so they don't only have to go back to this one plat and not go back like 60 years. So with that being said, we humbly request the Planning Commission to approve the application for the ownership plat.
Thank you, Mr. Collier. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in opposition to the request? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Commissioner Drum. Second by Commissioner Drum. I do have a question for staff. This has all been reviewed and everything is in order?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's very comprehensive, Mr. Collier, as you can appreciate, and to give us 5 minutes to review it would be pretty challenging. So we can assure staff has done so. With that, we have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve, second by Commissioner Drum. Please vote.
Ms. Casabon and Mr. Lauren, would you like to vote, please? No.
Double
You need to
click.
hit. Motion carries.
Thank you. Now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me?
Oh,
One quick new business item. As you recall, the Mardi Gras falls on the second Tuesday, so we are going to have our meeting Wednesday, the day after, which will be February the 14th. Then after that, we can follow our regular every second Tuesday schedule.
If it doesn't snow.
As far as I'm
February
aware of.
14th will be the Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah, Wednesday.
It's Ash Wednesday. And,
Yes.
thank you for the point of information. With that, we are, yes, Commissioner Lauren.
I'm taking my baby out to a planning commission meeting.
Last year we got a schedule of meetings. Could you get us one?
We sent one out, but I will get you one. Did the commission get our schedule?
The one I got was for last year. I haven't got one for
Yeah,
this year.
I thought we sent it out.
They do it.
Yeah, it's on our web, but it's on our website.
I can put it in
Yeah,
y'all's
But I'll be
packet.
glad to do that personally. I'll get that out to you.
I'll give you a zoning and a planning
Yeah.
one at the zoning meeting next month.
Okay, yeah, she'll do that.
We are adjourned.